Hey everybody, welcome to episode 17 of Scales Deconstructed. Today we are going to be taking a look at one of my favorite scales for getting more of an outside sound over a major chord. It is a mode of the harmonic minor scale and it is called the Lydian Sharp 2 scale. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so to start out, let's go over what is happening intervallically within this scale. So we're going to do everything in the key of G, and the scale is just like it sounds in the name. It's a Lydian scale, but instead of playing a natural 2, we do a sharp 2. And that one note, that sharped second, is what gives us all of these great outside sounds that we can apply over a major tonality. So we will start out on G. So a regular Lydian mode is 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. But now to make it Lydian sharp 2, we are going to take the A note and we're going to do A sharp instead. So now intervallically we have 1, sharp 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Another way to also think of this scale is it is the sixth mode of harmonic minor. So you can think of it as a B harmonic minor scale starting on G, which is our sixth note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you could either think of it like that or just think of it as a Lydian mode, but you modify that one note. I always typically like to think of it more in relation to just whatever scale it's derivative from. So I'm already pretty comfortable visualizing Lydian all throughout the neck. So for me, it's easier just to take that and modify that one note to get some of these new sounds. But some people are more comfortable thinking of it as to how it's related to whatever, scale it's a mode from. So if that is easier for you, feel free to think of it like that as well. And there are some really interesting chords that can be found within this scale as well. They're a little bit more dissonant and they may not be for everybody. Some people might not be able to stomach some of these sounds, but I love these sounds. So an example of the type of chord that you would encounter in this mode is like a major 7 sharp 9 chord. So that would be like a voicing like this. So that sharp 9 up on top, right, is what's really giving us that dissonance. Because if we just play the first 3 notes, right, it's just root, 3rd, and 7th. Sounds like a regular major 7th chord, but then you add that sharp 9, right, and we get this really colorful, sort of unorthodox sounding chord voicing, which I love. And there are so many different great voicings that can come out of this scale. But that's one example of kind of what this scale sounds like in terms of the tonality. Okay, so for part 1, we are going to run up and down the scale in our interval groupings. We're going to start with thirds and go all the way up to sevenths. And as always, if you would like PDFs of everything that I go over today with an additional 2 patterns per interval and arpeggio not covered in the video, you can head over to patreon.com/MikeAudetteMusic. So we're going to start with thirds, meaning that we take the first note of the scale, the G note, we go to the 3rd note above, 1, 2, 3, so G to B, and we run that same pattern throughout the remainder of the scale. So we take each note of the scale and we put a 3rd above it. So if we run that through the scale, we get this. Backwards. Okay, now I'm going to change up the pattern. I'm going to go down the first one and up the second one. So rather than going like this, I'll do the same one for the first pattern, but then the second one I'm going to reverse the notes and go. Okay, now if I run that idea through the scale, I will get this. Backwards. Alright, now next we will do our fourths. So this time we take G, we go to the 4th note of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, G to C sharp, which is a sharped 4. Now if we run that through the scale in ascending fourths, we get this. Backwards. Okay, now once again, changing the pattern, going down the first one and up the second one, which would start out like this instead of, we go. Okay, so now if we run that through the scale, we get this. Backwards. Okay, now next we have fifths. So if we go to the fifth note of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, G to D, which is a perfect fifth. Now if we run that through the scale in ascending fifths, we get this. Backwards. Okay, now changing the pattern, going down the first one and up the second one, we would get this. Backwards. Okay, next we have sixths. So we take our sixth note of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, G to E, which is a major sixth. Now if we run that through the scale, we will get this. Backwards. Now down the first one, up the second one. Backwards. Okay, now for our last interval grouping, we have sevenths. So we take the seventh note of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, G to F sharp, which is a major seventh. Now if we run that through the scale in ascending sevenths, we would get this. Backwards. Now changing the pattern, going down the first one and up the second one, we would get this. Backwards. Okay, so that concludes part one, our intervals. Now for part two, we want to be able to go up and down the scale in arpeggios. So we take each note of the scale and we stack the third and fifth on top of that. And this is really great for improvisation because you'll find these different arpeggios that line up on certain notes of the scale that give us some really great note selections and really colorful note choices. And I'll definitely be doing an episode on this scale for my improv ideas series as well, so we can dive more into which arpeggios I like to use when I'm soloing in this scale. So we get some really interesting arpeggios when we start stacking the thirds and fifths on top of these. So starting out, the G, the 1 is just going to be major. Right, pretty normal sound, but now the next one, the sharp 2, is actually going to be diminished. So we have A sharp, C sharp, and E, and this gives us some really great intervals right there. We have the sharp 2, the sharp 4, and the 6. So then the 3 is going to be minor, B minor. Now the sharp 4, we have another diminished, C sharp diminished. Now right here is one of my favorites, D augmented, the 5 is augmented. Such a great sound because we're getting the 5th, the major 7th, and the sharp 9. You could actually make that into a chord. Put the G on the bottom. Could be like a G major 7, sharp 9 chord without the 3rd. Alright, now the next one we have is 6, or E, which is just a regular minor. And now here's my other favorite one, the 7, which is major. So F sharp major, and then back to G major. So I love that right there, the F sharp major to the G major. That's a very distinct sound to this scale. The major arpeggio a half step below the root note. A lot of times you'll see people do this chord, right, like F sharp over G, or you can call it G major 7, sharp 9, sharp 11 without the third, whatever you prefer to view it as. But I love that combination of those two arpeggios. So if we do that through the scale, we get this. Backwards. Now we'll change the pattern, go down the first arpeggio and up the second one. So rather than this, we'll go. Okay, so now we would have this. Backwards. Okay, so there are 2 additional arpeggio patterns for these 3-note arpeggios, as well as 4 patterns with 7th arpeggios as well on the Patreon, which are very colorful, especially in this scale. So that concludes part 2. Now for our final section of the video, part 3, we want to be able to go up and down the scale in dyads. So dyads are just 2 notes played at the same time, and what I'm going to do here is take all of the intervals that I did in part 1, and rather than playing them as separate notes, I'm going to play them together as 2-note groupings. And this is really great for finding different combinations of intervals that you like within this scale, and then you can build chord voicings off of that. You can, do some improvisation using little 2-note groupings in between your lines. There's just so many great things that you can get from running through these exercises. So we'll start out with seconds, which are pretty dissonant throughout this scale. We have a couple of minor seconds that line up in some interesting spots, but like I said, I love the sound of this scale. This might not be for everybody, but if you're looking to get more outside sounds into your major playing, this is pretty much my favorite scale to do so. So if we start out with seconds, we take G, and then the second note of the scale is A sharp, which is technically an augmented second, right? Which we don't encounter very often, but anytime we're doing a mode out of the harmonic minor scale, there's always an augmented second interval. So we start here. Now if we run that through the scale, we get this. Okay, the next interval grouping would be thirds, so G to B, 1, 2, 3, or the third note of the scale. G to B, now if we run that through the scale in thirds, we get this. Okay, next we have our fourths, G to C sharp, augmented fourth. If we run that through the scale, we would get this. Okay, now our fifths, G to D, perfect fifth. If we run that through the scale, we would get this. Now sixths, G to E, ascending through the scale, we would get this. Last one is sevenths, G to F sharp. Going through the scale in sevenths, we have this. Alright, so a lot of really interesting exotic 2-note groupings that line up within this scale. So like I said, it's really great for building new chord voicings, finding new tonalities to experiment with, and just all around helps your overall understanding of all of the different scales that you play when you run through these exercises. So that is our episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. And like I said, if you would like PDFs of everything that I went over today with the additional content not covered in the video, you can head over to patreon.com/MikeAudetteMusic, or if you would like to just make a donation, you can do so at paypal.me/MikeAudetteMusic. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you at the next episode. Take care.